Now we at Abydos. Now Abydos is at the top. We're going to get this tighter now. You know what I'm saying? But this is just the introductory level, family. We working out. We working out today. You know what I'm saying? I feel empowered because we're talking about some, and they still here. You understand what I'm saying? You talking about some shit in the goddamn Bible. Motherfucker couldn't go there to see nothing. They got some goddamn trinklets and a makeshift, uh, 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 you know, where you could go buy some goddamn trinkets at the spot where they say it was, but you ain't got no ancient temples that still, nowhere can you go in the ancient world and find so many temples from the BC era stacked, still standing. Still standing. This is ridiculous. Nowhere in the world can you go and find, I'm talking about deep into the BC era. You know, some of these temples was built around 2,000-3,000 BC. And just like I say, the temple you see right here on that I'm showing you, this is the latest of the you could go, like when you study in architecture, you can see foundations under foundations under foundations. So what you see today is built on top of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different foundations, meaning the temple has been rebuilt 4 or 5 times. You can see, and they know that because they can see as they dig up, they can see the different layers of foundation. So our people built, and these have been spiritual centers far, far into time immemorial. Okay, and our people been going to these areas for tens of thousands of years. And like I say, when you got to Egypt, we were just so advanced as a people, mastering, so we were able to build these megalithic temples. Now, you're looking at Abydos. Now, Abydos is at the top. You see Abydos at the top. You see Thebes and Karnak at the bottom. And then you go over across the water and you see Abydos. Now, most of the temples on the across the water was cemeteries, because the west is where the sun set, and you know this is was the death of the sun, and most of the temples where you did, you know, your pilgrimages to was on the left hand side, where you see Karnak and Luxor and so on and so forth. The funerary temples was on the opposite side, which is the west side of the Nile. So yet and still there was other temples where, like Dendera, where, you know, it was not a funerary temple. So it is, but primarily when you're talking about the burials, they were on the west side of the Nile River, which is the side where Abydos, the Valley of the Queens, you see, that's a cemetery. The Valley of the King, that's a cemetery. You see what I'm saying? And Abydos was the temple for the worship of Osiris. Okay, so now that was a very, very prominent temple. It was the major temple for the worship of Osiris. And the archaeologists, when they did their research in about that temple, you could see, I mean, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jars where the pilgrims from all over the Nile, all over Africa, came with their prayer. They were their prayers on, you know, whether it was on a clay or whether it was on papyrus, and they would put it down in the jar, and they would take it and set it out there, and they found so many broken shards of the jars that have collected over the thousands, and you can just see it out there. Matter of fact, they, if I'm not mistaken, they call Abydos the city of jars. You understand what I'm saying? And so you see right here the temple of Abydos. Now this is this is in back of that temple. This is the front of the temple. Now, this is not even a part of the temple. It's in back of the temple. And this is where they call the Osirian. And this is where they say Osiris was buried. Okay. Now the thing is, one of the white archaeologists, his name was Petrie, Flinders Petrie, actually found a skull, you understand, in this temple. So we're not just saying that, Osiris was some spirit, because in the history of the Nile, they say he was the first king. He was the first king that ever sat on the throne. So, Flinders Petrie, a white boy who found the skull, say that Osiris very well may have been a real king. And what's so important about that, we inside of the temple. And any temple I show you, I done been in, okay? And this is a very significant temple because it's the only temple in ancient Egypt that got 7 holy of holies. And you can see this temple was built by Seti the first, which is my spiritual father, whom I was named after. And he constructed some of the most beautiful temples in all of Egypt. When you go into the Valley of the King, his temple was the most exquisitely carved temple in the Valley of the King. You understand? When you talk about even in this temple, and his son was Ramesses II, arguably the greatest king of all of ancient Egypt. And this is the front, and you see there you have the square columns, and when you're looking at some of the most, when you're talking about the temple of Osiris at Abydos, you're talking about some of the most exquisitely carved ancient Egyptian carvings, colors and all still there. You see right there, Seti the first. That's who that is, and you see him giving reverence to Ptah, to Amen. So even though it's the temple of Osiris, you still got to worship the other gods. You see Osiris, his blue Osiris. You see the yellow Isis, and we went over the colors not too long ago, but I'm going to bring it back to Patreon for my family because we're going to get busy on Patreon. You understand? You see the deep brownish red, not red. It's not, you can look at it and see it's just not red. It's brownish red. Okay, so the Egyptians were brown plus the red, and that's symbolic of the sun, that these were the children of the sun. Everything is cosmological, you see? And so again, showing you the Osirian, this is where Osiris was to be buried. And them blocks down there is some of the largest blocks ever constructed on the planet. You see? Now, if you look up at the top, you see the temple of Seti the first. That's the temple we dealing with right now. Now, if you look at the bottom, you see the purple light is like a blot. It says al-Kab. Al-Kab. Now, that area right there is where the first and second dynasty buried their king. That's Narma, Aha, Mena, all the early kings of the first and second. So that's very significant. That Seti would build the temple of Abydos that connected Osiris because the first kings of Egypt was said to be the predecessors, and that Osiris was their predecessor. He was the first king of ancient Egypt. And so they were the bloodline of Osiris. And that's why we are said to have the first royal or divine bloodline on the planet, because our bloodline, our dynasties descended from the gods, okay? That we descended from gods, okay? Osiris was a god king, God-man king. You see what I'm saying? He was the son of Nut and Gael. So he was a god. Isis was a god. You see what I'm saying? Which was his sister, yet again, his wife. Okay? And that's a topic for another time. You see what I'm saying? And so again, so you see how holy this area is. And that's why when people came and gave veneration to Osiris, they was also giving veneration to the first kings and and queens of ancient Egypt. And you got to understand that when you're talking about just say Pianki and Taharqa, who ruled around 700 BC. They almost as close to us as they is the first king of ancient Egypt. That's how ancient Egypt was. You understand what I'm saying? That's because Egypt lasted for 3,000 years. And so you talking about, you're talking about at Taharqa, they was damn near in the middle. So Taharqa is almost as close to us as he was to the early kings of ancient Egypt. That's so profound when I say that. And so these are the tombs. Now that's very significant that we are able to show you the first burials of the first and second